Om Prapana Parijataya Tatra Vetrika Panai Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Itamrita Dve Namaha. Our salutations to Bhagavan Shri Krishna, the wish-fulfilling tree, bestower of all desires of those who take refuge in him, holder of the cane in one hand, the holder of Jnana Mudra, the symbol of knowledge, and the milker of the Gita nectar. So this week, obviously, we pay greater attention to Shri Krishna because it's the period of Krishna Janmashtami. Formerly, it was there on Sunday. But we have a question before us about the significance of pilgrimages and the location of pilgrimages. So, so far in the Bhagavad Gita, we've been talking in the 4th chapter about the importance of what's called yajna. Yajna, literally a sacrifice, something that is given up, something that is offered. And every religion would have this understanding of giving, or yajna, self-sacrifice. For example, if you give to charity, something comes from you and goes to the other. It's not really charitable if you don't take something from you. So something comes from you and goes to the other in a spirit of selfless service, a spirit of generosity. If the spirit of generosity is not there, you can't really call it yajna. So, when we talk of things like pilgrimages, holy places, when we talk about temples and churches and those kinds of things, or a selected place, we find very often it is traditionally always been sacred. For example, if you take the hill of Tara, hill of Tara has been well known even before Celtic times, from maybe Neolithic times we've had it there. You take Newgrange, for example, in Ireland. You take, for example, the assemblage of all these holy wells, one of which is nearby. So it's not just the Christians that came and said this and declared this well as holy. There was a tradition prior to that. So there was a kinship to nature in that particular case, which had some special place, some sense of wonder. After all, when something springs from the ground, almost miraculously, then there is a sense that there is something special in it, that nature is providing us something free and something unusual for our sustenance. So water is vital to life. So Mother Nature, you can say, Mother Earth even, is giving us this wealth free of charge. When we consider what is God's grace, or divine grace, or however you want to call it, or nature's goodwill, it always involves a free flowing of something. Air is supplied to us free. Nobody put an air meter yet. Water is supplied free, although they put a meter on it now. But you can go to any river, it's free. You can go to any lake, it's free. You can even catch the dew that falls on a leaf and sip that in desert conditions. And it seems there's this beautiful arrangement that helps to sustain our organic life. So there's a mutual trade-off. That is, when an assemblage of people find something special in a place, as time goes on, that place becomes more and more holy because people go there for only one purpose. And we don't find any confines in nature. Everything we know affects everything. In today's modern language and concepts, it's called the butterfly effect. The idea is that some things, some tremor of a butterfly's wings, maybe in the Amazon jungle, will affect the air next to it. That affects the air next to that. That affects the air next to that. So it goes on. Ultimately, those ripples, as it were, will find their way to every corner. So everything is connected. That's the way of looking at it. What is our typical way of looking at it? Everything is separate. We don't see that connectedness. When we start seeing that connectedness, we start having more of a holistic idea or something. That every thought that we put out will ultimately affect us. Every action that we put out will eventually affect us. If we put out a good thought, then goodness comes to us. If you put something that is damaging, then something damaging comes to us. That's the law. That's the rule about it. Not because it's merely a rule or a law, but because the connectedness is there. You can't avoid it. No more than a drop in the ocean can ever find itself disconnected from the ocean itself or from water itself. So part of the spiritual pursuit is to find more and more of this aspect of unity. To go to the highest and deepest, most profound generalization of everything, where we find this unity, more and more unity occurs. And the more we go, the more expansive, the more general, the more subtle, and also the more truthful we find. Now in human consciousness, we find it. So what is more subtle than a waking consciousness? A dream consciousness. Can't really catch it. What is more subtle than a dream consciousness is a dreamless sleep consciousness, where there's merely sleep. Only an impression, if you will, of peace, but no objective duality. No way of understanding there is a this or that. No demarcation at all. And so we find it the highest point of creative potential there. Now, when we talk of yajna, the original yajna was very simple. In the ancient Vedic times, we find that the Samhitas, the Samhita portion of the Vedas, was dedicated to praising the various illuminating factors available to us. We call this the Devas, but it was well understood that the Devas were a part of creation. In fact, they were the first beings created. That means that the environment was created first, and they came as illuminating factors afterwards. Elemental nature. The philosophical interpretation of Devas comes later as mere intrinsic governing components of what we call the universe. And so to propitiate these elements, or to propitiate these powers, these graces, these glories of one central monotheistic entity, was the aim of these Samhitas, these prayers. But as we go on to the Brahmana portion of the Vedas, we find that ritual, yajna, becomes much more important. That we then become master of the Devas. So that means that if you take a collective view, God is not important anymore. It's the actual ritual that's important. The ritual and the recitation of the mantras becomes the controlling factor. Now put it psychologically. The psychological movement, the intention that is put out, is very powerful. Thought is very powerful. Why is thought so powerful? Because it's connected to cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness is a single entity from which the whole creation comes, is our idea. And so one of the characteristics of this cosmic consciousness or cosmic mind is there is a loving aspect to it. That is, from time to time. So yada yada hi dharmasya is the shloka that is always repeated from the Bhagavad Gita. From age to age, from time to time, whenever, yada yada, whenever there's a requirement, whenever there is a need, I, that is, cosmic mind, decides to avatar, to descend, to come down for the benefit of everybody when there is an upset of harmony, a dharma, and in reintroducing a sense of harmony and peace called dharma. That balance is what is required from age to age. And we find this concept in Christianity, we find this concept in Hinduism. But where we find the difference is that Christianity, being, say, 2,000 years old, their incarnation is deemed to be the only incarnation that came. Whereas, of course, Hinduism being a much older religion, whenever there's a need, it comes, not just once. And there have been many occasions where there's been a need. This need or this disruption infiltrating through the human psyche and the human environment, it collectively is called asura. Something like a demon. But you see, the demon is always within us. Devas and demons, from a purely psychological point of view, is the propensity to do something moral, to engage in noble pursuits, noble thoughts. Noble thoughts come to us from all sides, is what the Creator declares. So that kind of approach. But if you want disharmony, then you can go along this other line of what is called shreyas versus nishreyas, something that is imperfect, something that is full of desires, something that is restless. But we don't recognize it in this way. We recognize it as a means to personal satisfaction. That means that the biggest difficulty that we have is in terms of egoistic actions that serve to satisfy myself. And so therefore, we come to a single conclusion. What is the highest yajna, the highest sacrifice we can make? Is a sacrifice of ourselves, self-control. Let me just stop this for a time being. Okay.